You're listening to BioTalk with Rich Bendis, the only podcast focused on the BioHealth Capital Region. Each episode, we'll talk to leaders in the industry to break down the biggest topics happening today in biohealth.
Hi, this is Rich Bendis, your host for BioTalk. And rarely do we bring people back as a repeat guest, but sometimes it's very appropriate, especially when they have good news to talk about successes in the BioHealth Capital Region. So today we're bringing back Neal Piper, who's the founder and CEO of Luminoah. He also was the winner of our 8th annual BioHealth Capital Region Crap Trap competition and had high hopes and promise for his technology, has a great story to tell, and maybe we can talk about some of the things that have emerged with the company since he won that crab trap competition, and talk a little bit about what entrepreneurs need to hear about persistence and patience as you're trying to grow your enterprise. So Neal, welcome back to BioTalk.
It's really good to see you, Rich. Thank you for having me.
And I'm sure we're going to have some new listeners who didn't hear you on your first BioTalk episode. So I'm going to ask you to reintroduce yourself to them and basically talk a little bit about the story about Luminoah before we go into some of the details of progress that you've made in the company over the last couple of years.
It's an honor to be here, Rich, and just getting to see the work you and the team are doing just to bring the biotech, medtech community together and support us all really means a lot. It's why companies like us can succeed and thrive, and just thank you and the team for everything you're doing. I got into medtech in 2020 out of a personal need. I spent most of my career in healthcare. I was a leader at Pfizer and launched products in the US, worked quite a bit extensively in other markets in Africa and Asia, but I had never started a medtech company. It came out of a very personal need for our family back in 2019. We got the news that no family wants to hear, and that's that our 3-year-old son, Noah, had a tumor in the base of his skull. Our world was completely turned upside down in that moment. Noah was a normal, healthy kid running around with his twin sister, and suddenly he was living a sedentary life, getting chemo all day, EVA Children's, and then coming home, and he's tethered to a technology to feed him because he couldn't eat and drink by mouth because of where his tumor was. So he needed something called enteral nutrition or tube feeding, which the process is you have a pump that's decades old technology. It's IV pole base. It can be put in a backpack, but it needs gravity, head height. So essentially you have a pump that looks like it was made for the hospital with a bag that hangs above. You fill it up with cans of enteral formula. There's 200 different varieties on the market from folks like K Farms and Nestle and Abbott and others. And then you prime out the air. You plug that in right into your NG tube if you're in the acute care, which goes through your gastric pathway in your stomach or into a gastrostomy button. And then depending on how fast that fluid is going to your body, you sit and wait. So Noah is attached to this 8+ hours a day. We would do overnight feeds as well. And instead of running around like a 3-year-old, he's stuck on the couch watching TV and reading books. And as well, my wife's family helped out, and we were all handwriting logs of when he last got a feed. So we'd start with a new blank sheet of paper each day, and grandma fed this much, mom fed this much, I fed this much. And the last thing you want for an immunocompromised child who's got cancers and now being malnourished. It's someone in that situation has a 5x increase of mortality. Actually, 20% of cancer patients die of malnutrition, not the disease itself. And so it's just really surprised that here we were in 2019 and we're still stuck with this old technology. I knew a lot of friends that created the artificial pancreas algorithm that Dexcom acquired and integrated that to the first insulin pump. We can do better. Why is enteral nutrition delivery not similar to what has happened in diabetes care, where we moved from a prick test to injection of insulin to now a closed loop system with a insulin pump that no one sees? That was what we set off to achieve. It's really interesting in life, Rich, as you know, done so many incredible things in your career that things that we do before give us confidence to kind of lean into what's next. And so the time I was just a dad with a son who was dealing with something really challenging, and we all have passing thoughts that hit us day to day. And in that moment, I said, we need to do something about this. And so I know I was getting chemo. I was able to bring that Pfizer hat back open, which was getting up to speed on a new clinical state. So I started researching enteral therapy and talking to Noah's providers. And ultimately, we started Luminoah. And we wanted the name to be really personal. So at UVA Children's, when you ring the bell, signaling the end of chemo, there's a painting of a rocket ship. And Noah loved to talk about space. We did that a lot while he's getting chemo. And so when creating the company name, we merged illumination, the measure of light between stars, and Noah's name, Luminoah, to create a brighter future for tube feeding. That was the start of the journey. That was 6 years ago. And so what we've developed today is the world's first closed loop personalized nutrition delivery system. It's a mouthful, but essentially what that is an enteral pump that can pump against gravity. It looks like this. Really small. It's smaller than the footprint of my iPhone and works like a smartphone. You just swipe it to unlock. You've got presets here for morning, afternoon, dinner. You pumping food or water. It's so easy to use that it doesn't require training, and someone can use the instructions for use and start a feed. So that's the pump. That's a durable pump. And then we have a daily administration set that looks like this. IV bags that you see in the hospital. What it like a go-go squeeze. Any of your listeners or kids know what that is with the applesauce in it. This is the admin set. The way it's worn is you've got this magnetic felt clip here that you could put on your waist, or you could put this also in a fanny pack or gross body bag, and you attach the pump here. The bag you would fill up a nutrition with a funnel, and then you put that in your front pocket. You attach the pump head just like this, and then you attach this right to your gastrostomy button under your shirt or your NG tube. And so the goal here was that someone like our son, Noah, instead of being homeschooled to go on the playground, be on the monkey bars, and no one knows he's getting a feed, or those with aging parents that might have dementia or other issues, that parents shouldn't be fed on the bedside. They should be out in the garden or socializing with friends. And so the form factor of the technology will change the quality of life of how people live. And then from there, we build a full data ecosystem around the technology. For the first time in human history, now a patient will know in real time on their mobile app how many calories have been delivered, how much hydration, how's my weight changing throughout therapy, reporting session notes that I regurgitate, that I have some of the more common issues that you can experience in enteral therapy. That's all available at launch. And so 2 weeks ago, we got really, really good news that we are now FDA cleared. Now we can go and help a lot of people with this technology. And it's just the beginning. We're really building out a full data platform for providers to prevent patients from being readmitted due to malnutrition, to be able to intervene early. Ultimately, our goal is a personalized therapy for patients. Someone that has cancer needs a very different macro micronutrient profile than someone with a GI disorder with short bowel syndrome. So we're working to completely change the standard of care. That's our mission. And we get to wake up every day to go and now help a lot of people. And there's no better journey to be on.
Congratulations on the FDA clearance. We're going to talk a lot more about that, Neal, and also in helping improve the quality of life for Noah as well, which is one of the major goals. You basically have updated us on 6 years, sort of rapid fire. You were demonstrating to me, because I can see you. We're doing a Zoom with each other, but the listeners don't get to see that because we're only going to do the audio. One of the things we'll do after the podcast, when we release it, we'll find some way we can attach a video to the podcast for people to see you demonstrate like you just did for me, for the ease of use. of the technology, we'll do a transcription of this, put it into our newsletter, and we can actually put a video, or you can have illustrations to show what you illustrated to me and how simple it is to utilize the device. So let's go back a little bit. It's taken 6 years to get to where you are today. It wasn't an easy road. What were some of the major challenges you had to overcome to get to the point where you could actually go through the regulatory approval process with the FDA and get the clearance that's necessary to where you can actually sell this because you proved its efficacy and its safety, its ability to be used by other people like yourselves and other families? So talk a little bit about that journey over that 6-year period and some of the milestones you had to achieve, mountains you had to climb to get to where you are today.
How many hours do we have together, Rich?
Basically, we can do many chapters and editions of this, but if you can fast track it in a bulleted fashion for entrepreneurs that are listening who might be just beginning their journeys, anything you say about the challenges and how you overcame them would be beneficial to them.
In our old office had a drawing which said, this is what everyone thinks success looks like, which is a starting point, and then you're at the top of the mountain with the flag, and this is what the reality is, which is squiggly line of the ups and downs of the journey. And that's the day-to-day reality for anyone. It's every week has its challenges. And in the early days, it's will this work? Is what we're building really solving a problem? And I think for us, it was easy to have a strong why, right? It's embedded in our personal journey. I think for earlier stage entrepreneurs, why are you doing this? Because if you're doing it to make money, there's other ways, easier ways to make money. You really need to have a strong reason for why you're doing what you're doing. If you feel so passionate that no matter what comes at you, can't see the other side and don't have certainty that it's going to succeed, but you're not going to give up because there's so many things that are going to come at you on this journey that you would want to give up if you weren't doing it for the right reasons. So I'd say that any entrepreneur at any stage, you got to have a really strong why for why you're doing this. In the early days, we didn't want to assume that the problems experienced with enteral therapy at our family was what others were experiencing. So we talked to many other people. We've talked to over 1,000 people now to date to get feedback from people of all ages to providers, to payers, to the people purchasing the technology. In the early days, that's 6 years fast forward, but in the early days, you want a good sized number of people that you're getting feedback and taking off your biases to make sure that you're listening and not forcing kind of the problems that you see into what others. So validating that the problem is clear and then putting requirements around what you have to build to solve that. And so like early on, it's can you solve the technical hurdles of those problems once that's validated? And that's a challenge. If it was easy, it might have been done before already. And so for our case, we couldn't have built the technology we built if it was 10 years ago because the technology that's integrated into the system didn't exist. So finding the right people and being really capital efficient, I think being capital efficient across the journey is really important. Being mindful, I always say that if you're going to spend $1, it needs to add $1 to $10 of value because that's the expectation when you're raising capital, that there's a multiplier on that capital and making sure that whatever you're doing, that it's advancing the technology, that you're able to patent that technology, right? Because you get that first innovation as a patentable, really understanding who is the real purchaser of that and are they going to be willing to buy your product over what is entrenched in the market today, and that you have a clear understanding of the commercial plan even before you start building. Because if you don't have a billing code or a pathway to reimbursement later stage, it's going to be a really, really hard journey. It's already hard, but you add that in and now you don't have a pathway to revenue. What that means is going to be hard to raise capital. And so we had a lot of challenges along the way in each of those steps, figuring out how to solve pumping against gravity with varying viscosities of fluids, how to create a data ecosystem, how to make it light and so easy that 5-year-old could use the technology and have independence along the way and agency and his or her own health. And each stage has brought different challenges. I'd say that, along that journey, a full-time job, whether you're a scientist or a commercial leader or whatever your background is as you're leading a company, raising capital is a full-time job within itself. And so I think it's really important early on that you can create a very crisp and easy to understand story, one that inspires people and that makes it memorable. Two is that it's very clear within a few seconds that this problem is a need that needs to be solved. And then next, that your technology is a technology that can change the standard of care, not just add to a list of 5 other technologies that are out there, but truly transform the market. 3 is that you clearly understand how you're going to get reimbursed and get paid for it, and that you have the right people involved with the company to execute and achieve all those things. I think figuring out your story, I look at our pitch deck 6 years later, and now it's in Google, track changes. But before, we must have had every week it's evolving. Your story needs to evolve and change. But I think it's very easy in the early days, you want to talk about a lot of detail about what's happening with your technology. But I think the more you can roll it up into a very high level message, the more attractive it's going to be on the investment side in those early days. So I know I didn't specifically answer your question, Rich, but one of the hardest challenges, I would say that we anticipated clearance a little earlier or we were hoping for clearance a little earlier, and we had to get additional data back to the agency. And so those are really hard moments where if you set a target, set a milestone, entrepreneurs are always a little more optimistic along the way on timelines, but then make sure you clearly understand the reality and you're communicating with all your shareholders, your investors, where the risks are, what could delay, what could bring it in. Because building those relationships, you're going to hit hard stuff. The whole journey is bumpy. It is a bumpy journey. But if you build deep relationships with your team, with your consultants, if you have those, and with your investors and your board, and communicate clearly and build strong relationships, people are supportive when something goes awry. So I'd say that'd be the key takeaway. A lot of hard things, communicate well and build strong relationships and set clear expectations.
Well, I think you've proven technological feasibility. You've talked that there's a vehicle now for how it could be paid. You've gotten FDA clearance. You've gotten through a regulatory process. Now, a couple major things in the future are, how do you prove it's scalable? And then what is the commercial strategy now that you're cleared to get it into the commercial market? And all of these things take additional money. And you talked about capital efficiency. You've been able to finance the company through the first 6 years. So as you look at trying to scale, as well as the commercial strategy for going into the marketplace, it's going to take money. Talk a little bit about your plans for the scalability, what's your commercial strategy, and how are you going to finance this to get it to the marketplace where you know that there's a need for your product?
It's interesting. I had a few folks give me feedback. It was like, you got clear. That was the easy part. And I smirked because I didn't think that was the easy part. I come from a commercial background, but I recognize there's going to be a lot of challenges on that road. You've got to have strong commercial and clinical validation and demand and prove out with real world evidence. You need to build up manufacturing capabilities, scale that up with automation. You need to build out a commercial team. You got more HR development as your team scales. You got to raise a bigger round that's a little later stage. It's very different than your seed stage with angel groups and family offices and Series A. You've got very serious players involved along that journey. But this is where I get most excited at this point, because now we can actually do something to achieve our mission, which is to help people. That's why we wake up every day. And I hope that's why most of the listeners who are entrepreneurs wake up every day, because healthcare, as we know, is broken. Everyone knows that. It's complex. It's really difficult. But if we wake up with the right purpose, life's short. We're here for a finite period of time and let's do good. Let's change it. Let's make it better. And then you've got the realities of the system that we're playing in, right? There's the rules that are there and we got to go into the bounds of that and figure it out. But if you come at it with the right approach, you'll get through that just like you do getting through FDA clearance. So I'm really excited about this stage. We're preparing to close on a Series B here in the next bit to fully commercialize. We're building out our own commercial organization. We're going to automate. We're going to build out the device and the sets, work through the distribution networks. For the past couple of years, if you were building a product and getting good voice of customer feedback along the way, you already have relationships. Those relationships now you bring in, and now you can actually enable those relationships to be the first to have your technology. So we've got about 45 health systems and DMEs that want to partner with us. Our channel as we go into, GI is kind of our clinical nutritionists and GI providers. They prescribe enteral therapy. And then there's pumps that you can sell into the hospital on the acute care side, but also there's a very large community that is being treated in the home with enteral therapy. And that goes through the durable medical equipment, DME, home medical equipment, HME channel. And so we've got really deep relationships across the country, people that are friends of ours now. They're part of our extended family. We're starting with what's called an early access program. You'll have 3 major health systems across the United States that will have pumps on people next month. And we're going to get feedback, publish some data through that early access program, and then grow within those health systems. And then as we build up inventory, as we close on our Series B and we're capitalized, then we grow into other health systems. So as we go down that list of 40, 45 potential partners, the gates will continue to grow. That represents many tens of thousands of lives that we can impact here over the next year or two. And we want to make it really special. When we bring on a new site, we're going to have a big celebration. We want people not to feel like patients, but to feel special and unique and that we're there for them. Because that's why we're here. We're not here to sell pumps. We got to sell pumps. That's how you fund the mission. But we're here to help people. And if you have that as the core of your identity, everything you do is around making their lives better. How do you make the end user's life better? How do you improve the lives and the workflow of your partners, whether that's a health system, a payer, or a provider or a DME? How do you improve their workflow? How do you reduce their costs? How do you make them feel that you're there for them as a partner, not as a transaction? And so that's our DNA. I'm excited about this next stage. Yeah, we're going to have hard pricing conversations. Yeah, we're going to have pushback. Yeah, we're going to have to go through the administrative bureaucratic channels to get there. Yeah, the competitors are going to react. That's all just part of it. So really excited about this next stage.
I think that a lot of companies, when they get to this stage where you're ready to go commercial, sometimes it requires a change in leadership. But you know what? You went through some of the difficult stuff, and now we're into the sweet spot where commercialization is one of your personal expertise that you had in your career prior to taking on the creation of Luminoah. You've made it to a stage now where it's not more comfortable, but you basically understand what the needs are to take a product into the marketplace based on what you've done working for large corporations. I think you might be better prepared than some of the other entrepreneurial companies based on where the leadership is of the company and where you are at this stage. But you mentioned something earlier, Neal, and I'm talking to Neal Piper, founder and CEO of Luminoah, that the CEO is raising capital. It's ABR, always be raising. And you're at a stage now where there's another raise, you say a Series B. A lot of the people today are looking at the climate that we have for fundraising. A lot of entrepreneurial companies that are not at your stage are having difficulties. So let's talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the financial markets today for a company that's got an FDA clearance, ready to go out and release to the world. And what do you see the financial markets look like for you trying to raise a Series B in today's climate?
Yeah, it starts just at the macro level, looking at what we're seeing in markets today, where you've got some uncertainty from a geopolitical standpoint, and you've got public markets that seem to be pretty focused on infrastructure for AI and also AI investments that continue to grow and hopefully continue to see some longevity of that growth. And then you're also seeing some earnings calls with CEOs where you didn't quite hit the mark in the last quarter, and the markets are highly sensitive, oversensitive to the reaction to those earnings calls. That's the broader view. And then good thing is that we've seen some new companies go public. We're seeing some growth there. We're seeing some good M&A transactions in the market. And all that matters because then as you go into the private side, you've got LPs investing in the different venture capital funds. They've got optionality of where they put their money. It ends up making a little more selective which companies that VCs are putting private dollars in. And then obviously you've got a constrained market with family offices and angel funds where in the past couple of years, it's taking longer for investments to come to an exit. You've got companies coming back to the fund and you want to keep them alive, so you put more money into it. And then now a broader part of someone's portfolios and private deals that haven't yielded as fast as they expected. So that's the backdrop of the market that everyone is working in right now. And so it's just good to have that awareness. At the end of the day, good companies are going to get funded. It really comes down to having good relationships with investors. And that doesn't happen with one conversation. It happens over years of time sometimes. And so I'd say for any entrepreneurs that are raising, certainly think about your raise 12 months before you need it, at least, and really start planning around that, start building those relationships, signaling that you're going to open around in the future, but you're building a relationship and just get to know the people that you want to work with. For me, what matters the most for us is the people that we partner with, because my big goal, one, is that one day, whether we IPO or exit, we're not building the exit, we're building the change of standard of care in a space that hasn't seen any innovation in decades. But there will be some exit in the future if you went public. For us, our goal is that we would love for us to be on that slide when an investor is showing the LPs, the companies that are moving the fund forward, and we're far on the right as the biggest multiplier. But let's just assume that happens. Next, what matters is who we work together. So like when you think about the investors, like we want partners that are just as passionate about the mission as we are to help people. And if you can find that, investors that believe in the longevity of the company, that can see the growth potential, and as we release new products, what that's going to do to the growth of the company and the reach that we can have on patient lives, and then just have fun together, push back on each other in the boardroom, strengthen one another, challenge one another, but let's have fun doing it and do it for the right reasons. And for me, that's just as important as the capital that you raise. Ultimately, you can't survive without capital. You don't always get that choice to have multiple partners, but that's a real focus of ours right now as we're talking to investors, is making sure we have the right partners that are in it for the same reasons as we are. Let's just assume we're going to be the one with the big multiplier at the end and push the fund in a really positive direction and make more LPs want to jump in because of that investment and that they took the risk. But I think thinking about this as a backdrop for all the listeners who are raising capital, solidify your mind, understand kind of a couple things. Keep a very clear, simple message that you're communicating. Be transparent. Just be real. Don't always go in on pitch mode. Build deep relationships and recognize it's a journey. You're going to have setbacks, but be transparent and work with investors as thought partners and find investors that can be thought partners and build the company with you.
I think he has some excellent points there for entrepreneurs who are looking to raise. And when I was raising several decades ago, running into some New York investors, they always used to talk about, do you invest in the jockey or the horse? And basically, I think where Luminoah is today is they got a great jockey in Neal Piper, who's leading the company. And now you have a horse that you can ride with the Luminoah pump, which has been FDA cleared. So you basically have both elements, the jockey and the horse. So you should be a great investment opportunity for people who are looking to say, hey, we want to make sure we have a proven leader and we want to have a technology where we know that there's a market need for the technology and it has already been validated by the US FDA. And also, you've mentioned 1,000 people or 45 health systems. One of the things we go through right now is something that NSF has created called iCore. They have a program where you have to talk to 100 potential acquirers of your product to determine whether there's a validation for your product. You've done that 10 times over, Neal. If you've talked to 1,000 people, I think you've just validated what other people have taken many years to learn about what are some of the necessary ingredients to determine whether or not you have a product, a technology that a market might need, and then whether there's somebody out there that's going to buy it. Again, congratulations on being a jockey and a horse based on where you are now. Let's talk a little bit about the future. Other than raising your Series B, what are the other major milestones you have before you? And you're located in Virginia in the BioHealth Capital Region. You're not in Boston or San Francisco. So talk about how you're going to be able to achieve these milestones located in this nice top 3 biopharma region, but it's not the Silicon Valley and it's not Route 128. Talk a little bit about how you've survived where you are today, how you're going to grow, continue to stay in this region, and demonstrate you're going to be able to make a success here.
We wouldn't exist if we weren't in Charlottesville, being a part of this region and support from you all. And also in those early days, Seville BioHub, at the time, I was just a dad trying to solve a problem and needed to figure out how to get the business off the ground and find an IP lawyer and get NDAs in place and start finding smart people to build this. I don't have an engineering background, and Seville BioHub is really critical in our region early on, bringing in our founding engineer, Hill Johnson, who had just graduated from UVA's biomedical engineering master's program. I think to date, we've probably had 25 or so interns come out of that program. We found a lot of our early talent. We've got folks on the West Coast in San Diego, like Garrett Marin, who transformed the diabetes care space. We've got a team out on the West Coast, but we've got a facility here that will outgrow here in the next 12 months as we build our durable pump. We've got a contract manufacturer on our sets because you need one admin set every day. You get the millions of units very quickly. But finding talent, we've been really fortunate being near academic institutions in the early days to get really good talent into the door. I'd say about a third of our team graduated from UVA here, went on to Abbott and other places, and then came back, wanted to be in Charlottesville, moved back from the West Coast over here because it's a beautiful region that we live in. And it continues to grow. You've seen some big pharma investments into the region, which is going to bring more talent. San Diego is still a massive hub. Dexcom, Tandem, others build out that way. There's a really good biotech, medtech community. I think all this really evolved post-COVID, where you had these hubs where people invested and worked, and COVID kind of allowed companies to bring in people from other regions and these hubs to really start off. But I think it also comes down to the investment of our region and the focus from the top, from the government, leadership from folks like yourself, really driving this and bringing a focus on our area. And so our plan is to grow and build here. We'll probably have multiple offices as we grow, West Coast and East Coast. We'll need to multiply and scale our team here once we're capitalized with our Series B. And there's no better place, in my opinion, to build a company. The great thing about our region, you've got good talent, especially in those early days, and then access to academic institutions, grants through different government programs on our end in Virginia, obviously the Virginia Innovation Partnership Corporation. And then You've got good access to family offices and angel groups. I think the challenge then becomes when you're getting into the later stage where you're trying to find venture capital. Once you achieve some milestones, you've got to get out. You've got to go to different conferences. You need to be at JP Morgan. You need to be at LSI and other conferences to build relationships, because that's where we still have some work to do as a region to bring in more and more capital. We're seeing growth there. We're seeing that evolve. But then where these more traditional hubs like Boston and the Bay Area has more access to those relationships at capital, I think that's where we still have a little work to do as a region, but we're really proud to build and scale here.
We're proud that you're here, and we look to you to be another success story. And you talk about Virginia, it's on a roll right now because they've got Lilly, Merck, and AZ who have made multi-billion-dollar commitments to build new facilities in Virginia. At some day, you might be in the same breath, Lilly, Merck, or AZ, and continuing to grow in Virginia. So is there anything that we really didn't discuss that you feel the listeners need to hear or would like to hear about Luminoah and where you're at today, Neal?
I think I iterated a few times, but just you always go back to your why of why you're doing something. It could be a story of a parent that's experienced something. And for us, it was a child or someone that you know that experienced something. That's why you got into what you're doing. Make sure to lean into that. Don't lose your identity in all this. I remember our pitch shifted quite a bit. One phase when we're raising capital, and it was about the opportunity and how big the market was. We just lost the starting story. And that was a very short period of time. And I went back to what was true. And I remember one of our board members, Brian Hansen, is the president of a big diabetes company. He's a good friend of mine. He's like, don't lose sight of why you're doing this ever. Always stay true to that North Star, whether you're a one-person company or a 100-person company. And I think that's really important is you're going to get a lot of advice from a lot of smart people on this journey. And I think it's really important to consider and listen and be open-minded, be a lifelong learner, but ultimately use your gut of what you know is best and use whatever your North Star is, and then lean into that. And you're going to make some mistakes along the way. We all do. We all make mistakes, but your gut's usually right. And so just kind of stay true to your identity and your North Star and why you're building what you're building.
I think you're focused on your North Star. You haven't deviated. I think that we're going to have to follow your journey, Neal, because it's a very exciting story. You have the passion there. You're solving or trying to address an issue that evolved through a family challenge that you're basically addressing entrepreneurially successfully at this point. And you're going to help many other families and children, hopefully, with your Luminoah pump. So thank you for being on BioTalk today to update us on your progress. We're going to come back and tune in again after Series B has been successfully raised, once you've developed and has begun your national commercialization expansion. And I think you're probably more prone to go public to stay true to your mission than maybe turn this over too soon to somebody else, because I think you'd like to take this as far as you can personally, if I'm not mistaken. So
yep, let's go help a lot of people. So
it's going to help a lot of people. Yes. And so that's your North Star. So congratulations on your progress to this point, Neal, and we look forward to continued success with Luminoah.
Thank you, Rich. Good to spend time with you today.
Thanks for listening to BioTalk with Rich Bendis.